This is an expansion of something that I do for the IPG every 3 months. The IPG represents about 550 publishers in the UK, and what we do is try and make sense of what's going on. So we're not really trying to work out the future, we're just trying to work out the past and the present, and then try and make some statements about the future. So that's really what this is. It's, say, the digital year so far. There are a few slides. Don't worry too much about jotting stuff down if you think it's important. The slides will be available, I'm sure. So here we go. 2013 in 20 minutes. This is a sprint event. So eyes down for hopefully a fullish house. Okay, so beginning of the year, we looked at what was happening in the UK market 2012. We got ourselves up to about 13% of the market. And the overall book market was a wee bit ahead, so possibly driving some good value sales as well as volume. Of course, things are device-driven, and therefore we had the explosion of devices through last Christmas. The demographics we looked at, people are getting older and more female. And interestingly, E, yes, replacing P, but E now replacing paperback rather than E replacing hardback. So therefore, that middle continues to disappear. And yes, people who buy physical books want them to be nice. I agree with the fetishistic view of the hardback. Certainly at Faber, we only make a hardback. We don't do anything particularly nicer than that, but we have writers who are much loved, and therefore possibly we should be doing making extraordinary products for those writers. So the middle disappearing and being taken over by E on the bottom and fetish on the top. One of the things that I have to do, my job is write budgets. Where do I get the info from? Well, I do track the US. This is the US market progress over the years in terms of share of their business, la-di-da-di-da. But this is the bit that was important to me. I've tracked where the UK is, and then where the US was at that particular time, and then try and work out how far we are behind. Now, this is not a linear business, but at the same time, there are 30 countries represented in this room. So if you're trying to write budgets or try and work out what's going to happen with your country's market, latch onto a coordinate, if you like, and then try and track from there. So this is something that we look at very, very carefully. So at the moment, if the market continues as the US did, you would suggest that the UK market is going to grow 61.5% in the next 12 months. Now, there are major fluctuations in that, and of course, at the moment, we've got quite a steady Eddie show going on in the first 4 months of this year in terms of the UK. So there are seasonal fluctuations, but do lock on to an appropriate country and work out from there. Okay, what happened in 2013? 20p books. So Nook decided to take essentially reseller publishers' books, some of them down to as low as 20p. Amazon decided to follow, and therefore the 20p ebook was born. These 20p books sold, the values at least were in excess of 10 million quid, and what we found was that yes, those did well, but that may have accounted for the rest of the ebooks slowing down. So loss leading has now become standard in terms of what is going on, certainly in the UK market, whether it's Nook, whether it's Sony, and then Amazon bringing down to match. So these technological companies clashing together, trying to protect or grow market share. But the 20p book, which is now, if you like, disappearing out of the business, was a major factor for the first 3 months of the year. And we got global expansion. Yes, the US started, but everyone's going nice and tight now. Can't see the numbers at the back, don't worry. But that says US, India, Brazil, UK, Germany, Japan. And the rate of change, or the rate of moving to ebooks, will change and will be dependent on culture, yes, economics, and language. And certainly, sitting in London as an English language publisher, I feel pretty good about being an English language purveyor. But certainly, it's happening, and it's happening fast now. So E is not local, it's global, of course. There's no China on here, by the way. That's the session for next time. Okay, so that's the market. So other stuff that's happening, the big thing in the UK, I guess, was that tablets overtook e-readers as the most popular device. Now, is that important? Don't know. In terms of our sales, people who are buying tablets tend to be the light readers, they tend to be lifestyle, they tend to be much more prone to media events. The heavy book buyer is still on their Kindle, essentially, or the dedicated e-reader, working away. But yes, definitely, tablets are an opportunity for the book industry to bring in lighter readers. There's no doubt about that. So that is happening, and it's real. Children's sales are also now relevant. Yes, YA continues to be important, and therefore that's fine. That's pretty normal. But the sort of the family tablet and the products that are becoming increasingly available are real numbers and real revenue now. So children's has come to the party in now a big way. But illustrated is certainly still not. And anyone in this room who makes illustrated publishing on work cheerfully, cheaply, brilliantly, will inherit the earth. So that's the other stuff. Okay, here we go. Here's the big stuff. Agency and agency light. Now, the 2-year window, if you like, for those agencies, that clock started ticking quite a long time ago. For some, it actually started last summer. So the two-year break, if you like, that people got is almost halfway through. So whether agency light is something that's going to happen for a little bit of time. But if you read the EU stuff and you read the DOJ stuff, agency could be full on back in business as early as June next year. So there's quite a lot going on here. Similarly, or not similarly, but Penguin Random, of course, there isn't much more to say about this. The EU approved that on April the 5th, and of course they're going around the countries almost done now. But the point probably is that this is no longer a time when the industry is separate from government. The agency model was looked at really, really hard, both in the US and in Europe, but not particularly elsewhere. But I think we're moving into a point where government intervention in competition is here to stay, let alone the legal clangings around between all the other big companies. They're going to be illegal forever now. But certainly, when I look at the way that those monopoly commissions reports are written up and being involved in them myself, I think that the EU is now going to look at the competition that's in our industry. I don't necessarily mean between publishers, I mean in other ways as well. So government is here to stay. So I suggest that you get very, very tight with your publishers' associations because, yes, they've been important for the last 100 years, but they're going to become much, much, much more important in the next 5. Strong publishers' associations, really key now. Okay, that's the big stuff. Internal publishing stuff. This is just a bit of a riff on the sales and marketing areas. But Macmillan, Faber, Penguin, Atlantic, all announced different sales and marketing publicity structures. And this really is, again, absolutely the white heat of what we're trying to do. I have this phrase, if you like, that is publishing taste and technology. It certainly used to be. You'd choose a book. The technology was unimportant. The technology bit was just the production director printing the books. Those two things have now merged. Technology used to be a little bit over here. Now you want it right in the middle. Right in the middle. You need the taste, the editorial, the creative, but it has to join exactly with technology. So the skills that we have right now, do you import them or do you internally develop them? This is a massive and key issue for all publishers sitting in the room and something that I wrestle with every day. I almost feel like stroking this graph, because this is the past, and it was lovely, and it was beautiful, and we could all, long lunches. And the salespeople loved the retailers, and the retailers were loved by the consumers, and I am getting a tear of nostalgia as I speak. It's not like that anymore. Yes, the push world into the retailers is still important for mass market. And yes, those ecosystems in some ways still work, but in a number of other countries, the tectonic plates broke. We became less friendly with retailers. American technology companies came in and started messing up with the internal ecosystems of those industries. So we had to get to the consumer, and we had to get to them fast. So we were in a linear place, we're now in a hybrid place, but we're going to be in a 360 place big time. So all your people and all your staff need to be experts at specific things, but also brilliant publishers, brilliant at the technology. So the internet, if you like, this is what the internet really meant for publishing. We needed to get really good at search, we needed to get brilliant at content, and we had to start talking, and we had to be generous. And then we got data, day-to-day data. But who's going to communicate to your community? It ain't going to be the marketing assistant who's been brought in on no money. The community doesn't. That's not interesting. That person is, I'm sure, very lovely. I've got lovely people who work for me. But that communication is being shoved up the line. At the very least, they want to talk to the editor who's made those taste and judgment decisions, and possibly a personality in their own right. But also, of course, they want to talk to the author, or being managed in some way. So providing stuff for the internet, you need content, but you also need personality. And those are major challenges for people in my business. And who does that? And as a provider to the internet, it's essentially a very informal tone, but at the same time needs really specific disciplines. And those people are quite hard to find in the same person. Again, it's very tricky. So are we actually in a technological phase where essentially the people who are good at Twitter do the tweeting, and those people who are good at uploading the files do the files? But are those the right people to be talking to the audience? There's a phrase that I overheard at Faber saying, quite frankly, anything vaguely 21st century has been done by marketing. But of course, PR has traditionally done the comms. So that's to go back to where my issues are, if you like, in terms of trying to run the commercial business at Faber. So restructures and re-energizing of those particular things, really important and happening now. And Macmillan, brilliant job done there. Penguin also done it in their own way. So it's all happening. Some are still not doing that. Silos are effective, but they're not as good as merge. So it's also happening at the corporate level. Adobe was bought by Sainsbury's in February. Mobcast bought by Tesco in 12, but they're launching. Bookish was bought by Overdrive. Amazon, interestingly, in 1998 bought IMDb, which is a film stuff. But of course, probably, maybe the most important thing that's happened in these 4 months is that Goodreads was bought by Amazon. Quite a lot of do read up on this because I think it's important. And the piece by Andrew Romberg around it was also brilliant. I do thoroughly recommend that you look for that. So why were they doing this? Of course, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Amazon have loads of customers, but they don't necessarily have loads of brilliant at delivery of stuff, but they don't have communities. The recommendation things are clunky. So that's why Amazon bought Goodreads. And of course, it's all about, yes, indeed, a good old friend, the discovery gap. So, and it will remain a big deal. If I go into a bookshop, let's say this size, I'm here at the front door, I can see 100,000 titles, straight there. If I look at a screen, I can probably see about 6. So that will remain the fundamental difference between an analog physical universe and searching, looking for online. It's absolutely basic and essential. So how people discover stuff is extremely important. Now, the discovery gap, I think, it was coined in the States. They just lost borders, and 20% of their bookshops have gone down, and they don't have a national media, PBS possibly. In the UK, we have a very strong national media and a major culture of reviewing books. I was in New York with Peter Carey not so long ago, and he was decrying the fact that books in newspapers didn't really exist. This weekend, if you go through the UK newspapers, there'll probably be about 100 books that are reviewed. So yes, we're talking about a discovery gap, but also, for me, there's a recommendation gap. In the olden days, bookshops had wonderful brands, everyone loved the bookshops, and it was fantastic. Bookshops lost their brands, and certainly in the UK, people went back to the certainties. And certainties in a time of uncertainty are really, really important. So my brand's really important right now, by the way, as well. Different speech. So the recommendation gap, as I'm now calling it, is where I think all these other businesses are trying to get to. And Jelly Books is one of those things in the UK, and a wonderful new thing, a newish thing. So what about the new products and tools? The list of people above there are the ones who are being honoured in this conference today and tonight. But I was interested to see where the publishers are. Yes, Nosy Crow has made good inroads. And certainly at Faber, we make apps, we make games, we're building platforms, and we publish iPad stuff, which are not either apps or books particularly. It's a hybrid thing. So that's what we're doing. But I think, interestingly, the publishers are working really, really hard on the digital side, but also not being very loud about it, because this has become quite a competitive area. So, I mean, Pottermore, Book of Spells can sell a million units and not actually get much fanfare. So publishing digital at the moment is, well, certainly for the 4 months that I'm talking about, has been quite quiet, and I'm trying to work out why that is. And I think, as I say, it's about competition, interestingly. Reed Petite has also just announced as well, and that's we'll come on to that later, but that's just a very, very new entrance. What else is going on? Royalty disputes are continuing, some behind closed doors, and some not. Some big names are going solo, but the most authors still want the allure of being published. That's good news for people like me. So I get to keep my job. And Open Road and HarperCollins are also in dispute. So these things we're still in a time of conflict to a certain extent, and they are still being worked out. But authors are staying with publishers. Other stuff that's happening, digital first. So every self-respecting corporate has to have a digital first business. That's just to show you, you're on it. And chunking a subscription is now starting to become something which is much more real. Spotify, I think, provided a solution, if you like, for the music industry. We were pretty desperate at that time. I don't think we're in the same situation with books. But chunking and subscription and the Reed Petite is part of that, and there are other people in the room here. But we're beginning to get to a point where chunking and subscription is becoming very much a reality. But guess what? People still don't like reading short stories. You can ask them as much as they want. They still want the big stuff. And they don't really like poetry either. They do a bit, and it pays by salary, but EPUB 3 also, unfortunately, going nowhere fast at Faber. We love EPUB 3, but at the same time, it's become something that's not being picked up fast enough. And the erosion of DRM is a really, really interesting one. I put it up there as a sort of, is it erosion? I'm very much a dandelion kind of guy, I can tell you. And to spread the word and spread the news is, I think, interestingly, very much an independent publisher's view. Hachette, I think, have made very clear that they will be standing by Mordor style and making sure that no one will pass. They are not dandelion guys, quite frankly. But in the independent sector, I think you'll find that a DRM agnosticism exists, and a number of us will continue, will watch this space. And sort of second, finally, I was told not to do this slide, is the old world holding? Ebook rise is slowing, no major retailers went bust in the English language markets in 2012. Indies and chains had an okay Christmas, and E&P seemed to be sort of making friends, both internally and externally. We're sort of beginning to realise the relationship. And I can only tell you that that's a mere respite in the extraordinary time that we're having. Nothing is sacred. Everything is changing. And yes, there might be some stats that saying that things are slowing down, but quite frankly, we're just in the changing room at half-time having an orange, quite frankly, because we'll be back out for the second half very soon. Thank you.